Okay. Oh, we have people joining. Hi there. So it's always exciting this time. You can see people joining the room and the numbers build up. I'm Rob Dias, kind of founder of Prodental. We're running this webinar completely for free. So it's Nicki and Andy. Nicki, who I've yet known for, oh goodness knows how many years, for well over 10 years. And we've worked together on many projects over the years. And she's always been incredibly enthusiastic, incredibly knowledgeable, which has been great. Andy, I have a connection because we're both from Grimsby originally, which is always good. So I'd like to pass you over to Nicki. What we'll do is we're going to make this an informal webinar, in as much as if anybody wants to ask a question, just ask, and I'm active and ask either Nicki or Andy, whoever is relevant, who can answer it. There will be a recording made of this as well, which will be available afterwards. And also everybody on this will get an email in the next day or two and showing them how to get the CPD, which is again, all free. There's no charge for anything in this at all. Okay, so I'll pass you over to Nicki.
Thank you, Rob. And thank you for inviting myself and Andy to join this webinar today. So just a little brief background about me. Used to own a practice in Beverley. We set that up in 2005. Sold it 10 years ago, and I set up my own consultancy business. So it's essentially compliance and business management consultancy and training. I've known Andy for years. I think we met through networking originally in the East Yorkshire area, and Andy and I do some work together on training, consultancy. Historically, Andy's sat outside of the dental industry, but worked in the corporate world, so brings a huge amount of benefit to our industry. And today we're going to be talking about how to draw the pull in the practice and how to achieve that by generating connections between yourself and your staff and yourself and your patients. So I'm going to hand you over to Andy. He's going to introduce himself and then roll with the webinar.
So thanks for that, Nicki. So here's the thing. It's always a bit of a dynamic shift when you're used to dealing with people face to face and seeing the whites of their eyes in a training forum. My background, as Nicki quite rightfully said, is very much that of the corporate world, where I've worked in a HR capacity for a good long while. And probably about 5 years ago, I took that skill and sort of morphed it really from the point of view of looking at culture inside organisations. In fact, when I speak publicly, one of the questions that I ask the delegates is, what does HR mean? And of course, they throw at me human resources. And I always say, well, what we want to do today is we really want to focus on the human side of that. I want to talk specifically today to you about really the difficulties that practice has with regards the culture inside the organisation and how does that affect the business and what's the ramification for the business outcome. So I'm going to embrace the fact that you are dental practices and you are slightly different in many ways, but of course you are a business. So we're looking for a business outcome here. So if we were going to say what I'm going to try and deliver today, really, it's trying to give you a bit of an insight into what the broader world looks at with regards how to shift culture inside an organisation for a better outcome from a commercial business point of view. And that's what I do pretty much from a day-to-day now. I do work, as I say, with Nicki, and we also run seminars as well. And I actually go into businesses as well and consult with businesses to look to see how we can shift that momentum inside the business to have a better gel really with the organisation for a better outcome. Let's break this down. Let's just start from the beginning. And I think a good place to start really is to look at and to consider what is it that employees actually want from an organisation. And there's been lots of research done in recent years, and you are probably all aware now that the world is changing. The dynamic of the relationship between the manager the employee, the directors, the practice owner. It's all changing to a degree. Just life in general is changing. And if we look at what the starting point is, we can say, okay, there are various trigger points now that employees want and need to ensure that they're engaged. We need to have a cultural fit, or they're now looking for a cultural fit. So when they join an organisation, it's no longer just the case of that when you're employing a new receptionist or a new practice manager or a new nurse, actually those people, they may not necessarily vocalise the question, but they are now, according to recruitment companies, looking internally for an alignment between the culture of the organisation and actually their own culture as an individual as well. So organising and aligning those cultures between two entities, be that in any relationship, you could almost say this is a little bit like a dating scenario. When somebody goes along and they want to meet somebody new, a new partner, there's got to be a meeting of minds there, as well as cultural belief systems, etc. And that's what employees are looking for now. They're looking for a bigger picture. They're looking for timely recognition of good work that's done. So they need that pat on the back, and they want to be engaged in a very open, friendly culture that's going to ensure that they do recognise when things are good and when things are done well. They're looking for an ability to learn and also to potentially rise through the ranks and maybe work their way up in an organisation. Certainly to grow as individuals, so maybe training courses, as you're maybe sat on now, webinars, maybe other forms of study. And we're also looking for more work-life balance now in our life, more flexibility. If we think about maybe life back in the 1970s, so as Rob has already alluded to, I was a boy growing up in Grimsby in the 1970s, and it was a very, very typical 1970s family in the respect of lived with my mum and dad, 5 other kids in the family. I was going to say organisation then. 5 other kids in the family. I was the baby of the family. If I got poorly, my mum was a stay-at-home mum. Dad went out to work, and if I got poorly, mum was there to look after me. Across the road, we had a neighbour that we called Auntie Sharon. She wasn't my real auntie, obviously a very 1970s thing. But nonetheless, Auntie Sharon was directly across the road. So there was a network of support there. And when we look at life now for parents and parenting, it doesn't look anything like that now. So, of course, what that means is there's more pressure to bear now on staff and on employees based around what sort of difficulties do they now manage at home. So when you consider that, you then have to think to yourself, well, okay, if maybe the world has changed from an organisational point of view at home and in the family unit, what is then the impression then on the business, and then what's the requirement? Because of course we all know that if a child gets sick, mum's got to stay at home, dad's got to stay home, there's got to be a care system in place there. So we are looking for some big shifts here in flexibility in the way that you work. Now, hold your horses for those of you that are currently shaking your head saying, yes, Andy, but we run a practice. We can't close on a Friday. I get that, and I'll get round to that, certainly. So individuals are looking for also for something called purpose over profit. Just a little bit of background for you. I also work in an organisation called Business of Brand. Shortened down, that's Bob, and I work with 2 amazing entrepreneurs down in London. One's called Lindsay Boyd and the other one's called Darren Sherlaw. And what they look to do is they look to shift the world through the eyes of brand. So that's through the eyes of the business that they're looking to shift the world. And the whole idea when we talk about something called purpose, it's what is the bigger purpose, the bigger idea inside our little organisation, which is a dental practice in the village or wherever you may be based. How are you actually on a bigger scale impacting the world? And staff now, they don't necessarily understand that language, but they're certainly looking for a bigger picture and to actually be involved in a much bigger social response to the requirements of life. Nicki, can I just throw this back to you? Because
yes, of course.
When we presented some of the Business of Brand stuff to your colleagues, there was a lovely lady who does loads of charity work, and her name has just slipped me by 5.
Is it Rachel?
Yes. Yeah, do you want
Yes.
to just tell us about what she's doing from the point of view of how she's engaging the local community and what she's doing?
Rachel and her practice are well renowned now within the UK. I mean, they are a premier practice, and they have built their brand off the back of CSR, so corporate social responsibility. And they're doing amazing things, such as reaching out to the community, doing a lot of charitable things, particularly with the homeless. So what they've done over the years is raised enough money to buy a minibus. They go out and triage the homeless in an evening, and any homeless person who might actually need intervention is then put on the minibus, taken to the practice, and actually treated for free. And, you know, obviously they get a lot of publicity off the back of it, to the point now that Leeds United Football Club have actually come knocking on their door and want their players treating. So by actually giving back to the community and demonstrating their purpose, they have built their business off the back of that, and it hasn't cost them much at all. Now, for me, going back to what Andy said about purpose, a lot of practices try and build their culture on the back of their mission statement. And I think that's a very 80s, 90s thing that we've heard bantered about. It is definitely, the world is shifting, as Andy said, and it is now about purpose. That's why we're doing things, not the what, it's the why. So we're moving into that, the why culture. And if you set yourself a purpose, for me, my purpose and my strapline is emotion-led dentistry, injecting life back into practice, because that's absolutely what I want to do. So we're generating a culture where the management team and the staff are connecting, cohesive, working together for the best of the patients, but also you're understanding your patients individually and the greater needs. So you can tailor your brand, your service offering to the needs of your customers, of your patients. So that is what purpose is all about. But it's why you're doing it. Why are you doing that? And how do you demonstrate your integrity, build that trust with your team, and build your trust with your patients, so you can actually deliver the why. So I think Rachel and her team do that amazingly well. And they you know, they share with the community exactly what they're doing. And by doing that, yes.
So there's two words that you use there, which are fabulous words, and they're such useful words when we talk about business. And the first word that I'm just going to pull out is literally that word, pull.
Yeah.
So today's session is about creating pull inside the practice.
It absolutely is.
So what I'd like to do is I'd just like to just sort of talk to the delegates really about how and what that actually means. And I'm just going to give you a couple of little examples on that. When we talk about this thing pull, what is pull as opposed to push? Well, we know we can see the physical thing is pull and the physical thing is push. So if we go back to a 1980s style of management, which was sort of very rigorous and very sort of carrot and stick, that's pretty much a push management. So in other words, it would go like this. You will answer that phone within 5 rings. You will ensure that you get an upsell with your insurances. You will. And that's the push. And of course, backing up the push was very often some form of a stick. Well, that's dead and buried now. That's gone. There's no merit to that. There's no advantage to that in any way. So we've now switched and we've now shifted to a world of pull, where what we want to do is we want to generate, almost like, if you were to imagine, we generate this amazing whirlwind around us of positivity, so that wherever we walk and wherever we go, it sucks our staff members in, and everybody just wants to be in our gang, almost like the Pied Piper. The Pied Piper would play the flute and walk through a local village and all the kids would follow. That's kind of what we want to do in business. So how do we do that? To create pull, both from the point of view of new clients and also from the point of view of staff. As Nicki was saying there, she just wove in another fantastic word, which is trust. The thing is this, and here's the thing. If we go back to what I was saying 5-10 minutes ago around what employees want, we're never going to be able to create pull inside our organization until we've created trust. We need our individuals to trust us. that then begs the question, well, we say, well, okay, how is it? How do we actually get to this position of trust? Now, you're talking about there the $64 million question, because of course we can't just build trust overnight, and it is an evolution and not a revolution inside the business with regards how we're going to create that. But a starting point is to start to try and understand what is it that makes your employees tick. And of course, they're all individuals, every single one of them. They've all got their own idiosyncrasies. Some of them are more easy to work with. Some of them are all more naturally trusting compared to others. And so what we need to do is we really need to get under the skin of our employees to create that trust. Now, on some of the seminars that I run, I do a bit of a deep dive also with the seminars that we do with Nicki. We do a deep dive onto how do you actually utilize some of the things that are in HR, but not really from a HR perspective, more from a human perspective. So we don't necessarily have time to do it today, but certainly there's other ways that we can pick this up with you if you want to learn more about it. But we talk about how to use some of the things that are in HR, like an appraisal, which typically is very much a tick box exercise where people will say, you know, a practice partner will say, have we done all the appraisals? And the answer comes back, yes, we've done them. Okay, were all the boxes ticked? Yes, they were. Were they all signed? Yes, they were. But then there's no follow-up necessarily from the point of view of what did we find out about the individual that we sat with? What maybe did we agree moving forward? Did we able to bond with that individual? How did you manage to create more trust with that individual? Because here's the thing, and I say this from a HR perspective, when we've got that trust and we've got that ethos, actually life becomes so much more simple. We don't need to worry so much necessarily. I know compliance is important, I get that, but if we focus more on the human side, everything else gets easier. Would you agree with that, Nicki?
I absolutely would. And I just want to go back to what you were saying, Andy, about appraisals. They are an obligatory activity now within CQC and the well-led key line of inquiry. But for me, that's not enough. And when I'm doing consultancy and courses, you know, with yourself and other trainers, I talk about techniques that you can use, firstly, to build the trust in your organization, but secondly, the tools that you can use to actually find out what motivates individual team members, what the fear factors are, what the future looks like for them, what do they like doing at work, what do they like doing at home, what don't they like doing at work, because you know, you've employed them and expect the fact that they're going into the workplace that they're going to enjoy the job that they're doing because they've applied for it. However, there's other tools that you need to consider thinking about in the future. And one of those is a skills gap analysis. And I actually call it an ASK. So ASK. What that means is attitude, skills, and knowledge. Now, this goes back to a piece of research that Harvard University did quite a few years ago now, but it's still very relevant, even more today, I think, that they looked at the top 100 businesses in the world. So globally, they took the top 100 businesses and looked at why they were so successful. When they drilled down into the fine level of detail, it was about the people. And they came up with a model called the triangle of success. So a triangle of success. On each side, they had knowledge, skills, and attitude. Now, you'd be very surprised to know that when they looked statistically at their analysis, the attitude came out at 55%. So when we're doing appraisals, we're really looking at people's skills and knowledge and how they implement that. It really misses the biggest chunk, which is looking at people's attitudes, behaviors, how they interact. Are they a good team player? You know, we look at the 45%. So we're missing a huge amount of information that we can work with and develop, firstly, to build that trust with our team, but to ensure that they're maximizing their potential, that they're always keeping their attitude above the line to drive the other two things, and actually to help drive the purpose in your practice. Now, for me, and Andy might say something differently when I finish talking, purpose to me is how you show up in the world, how you appear. So whether that's an individual purpose for you personally, or your business's purpose? Is it how you show up? And how you show up is how you behave. So it's got to be tangible. It's got to be consistent. You have to do what it says on the tin. That's your purpose. And, you know, underlying that as well is why you're doing it. So for me, when you're doing appraisals, skills gap analyses, interviews, whatever it is, to find out what your team are needing to build that trust, they also have to understand the purpose of the bigger organization. If you imagine your business is a vehicle on a road to its destination, and the destination in your mind is success, and you can define that in whatever way you work. The vehicle is your practice. The road that you're taking is your mission, and along the way you're setting objectives, and a lot of people use KPIs, or I tend to use SMART objectives. So they are your sat nav. I call them your strat nav. It's helping you get your vehicle from A to B, and you're then mapping it out. However, the most important bit is the cogs in the engine, and that is your team members. They all need to mesh together to drive that vehicle forwards. So if each team member understands the purpose, they're all highly trained and well-oiled, they will mesh together and drive that vehicle forwards a lot more quickly. If they're crunching and grinding and they don't know what the destination looks like, it's almost like getting in a car and driving without your map and that destination in mind. You're just going to end up going around in circles and running out of petrol eventually. So, your purpose is absolutely the foundations of your business. Would you agree, Andy?
I would, and I'm just going to take you back in time again, just to further talk about pull and about this shift of culture. Shifting a culture is not easy, and there are going to be some people that want to go on the journey with you, and there'll be some people that don't want to go on the journey with you. But the thing is, that's just business per se. Let's talk about some of the people that have been fairly visionary in the way that they've created culture and actually what's been the outcome. Now, unfortunately, at this moment in time, and we'll just have to park the situation currently, if we were having this conversation 6 weeks ago, then everything was good for Mr. Branson, but he's had some bad press recently. But let's just put that to one side for 1 second, okay? I very often say to the delegates, have you heard of a guy called Richard Branson? And they go, yeah, of course we have. Right, okay. Why do you think? Well, he's incredibly successful. That's why we've heard of him. Now, what's really interesting about Richard Branson is that I include him in a lot of my training as an example for somebody who embraces culture inside their organisation. And this can be further demonstrated actually, because going back about, crikey, probably about 2 months ago, I was running a seminar at a golf club in Lincolnshire, and I was setting up, getting ready for 25 delegates to come for the day. And the manager was there of the golf club, and he said to me, so what is it that you're talking about? I said, well, it's kind of HR, but actually it's more about people and more about culture. He said, well, what do you mean by that? I said, well, I give examples about Richard Branson and things. He said, Richard, do you mean Richard? I said, yeah, Richard, yeah. He said, I worked for Richard. He was an amazing guy. Now, I thought this is going to be interesting. In a flash, I thought to myself, this is going to be really interesting. And I let him talk. I let him unravel the story a little bit. And it turned out that this chap actually worked for Richard Branson at one of his ski chalets in Switzerland. And he waxed lyrical about the organisation and about how fantastic the whole thing was and all the rest of it. Now, what's really fantastic and interesting is that you've got an entrepreneur there, an individual who creates pull inside the business. He makes sure that there is a culture fit for people inside the business. So when somebody joins that business, they feel like they fit and they belong. He makes sure that they align their personal and organizational values as well. He looks to make sure that there's timely and regular recognition, i.e. employee of the month in place. He looks to ensure that there's ability to learn and rise through the ranks. He pays for people to have education and to benefit from that. In fact, the chap that I'm talking about, when he told Richard he was leaving to start his own business, Richard congratulated him and said, if there's anything at all I can do to help you, please come back to me and I will. Because what Richard's doing is constantly, he's thinking about the bigger picture and that PR story. So there's a lot that we could discuss, and unfortunately we don't have time today, but we talk about, I run another session with Nicki, where we talk about how to make your staff members, so if you've got 20 staff members, we talk about how to create them as being 20 walking adverts for your practice. And my goodness me, that really can bring in some new clientele. We don't have time for that, unfortunately, today. But when you talk about quick wins with regards the organisation for bringing new staff members in and retaining good staff members, I'd actually say to you, there's a few things that you can do. And a very quick win, one of the first quick wins that you can do and that you can consider. If you do think about this moment in time, we are in the strangest of times. None of us in our working careers have ever been through anything like this. Your staff members at this moment in time will be a bit uncomfortable, possibly a bit stressed. They've got the kids around them, they're trying to do homeschooling. There's a lot going on, plus there's the relationship things at home going on. So if your business was able to help those staff members externally just during this difficult period, you would find that that would be a very quick win in the way in which you could create that little bit of trust. Only a little tiny bit, but you could be able to, just by sending a staff member a little message, just saying, how are you? How's everything at home? Are you getting on okay? Is there, you know, where are you at? Just asking those questions and reaching out. And then if you want to take it that one step further, do some research on something called an EAP, Employee Assistance Program. A few of you may have heard of this before, maybe some of you haven't. Let me tell you what an EAP is. Back in the 1990s, big organizations like BP, Shell, mainly oil companies, telecommunications companies, they figured out that one of the major threats to their business was actually staff members bringing problems into work, i.e. relationship breakdowns, debt problems, maybe health issues, all these different areas that somebody can bring into work with them. So what they decided to do was very clever. They created an external team of people to support their staff members with issues around legality and relationships and debt and just all the stuff that we get tested with by life. And that was called an EAP, an Employee Assistance Program. Now, back in the 1990s, that was incredibly expensive to put inside a business. But now, today, you can Google, you see how I did the Google thing? You can Google online today, and you can find your own EAP, Employee Assistance Program, and that can give your staff access and support immediately to some of the stressy things that they've got going on inside that, including mental health issues as well. And all of a sudden what you do is you're starting to build something there. Now, just for the monetary minded people that are thinking, oh, there's going to be some cost on that, I have to tell you, it's minute, it's pence, it's absolutely nothing from the point of view of your commercial requirement. And actually, what's really cool around that is that you get a fantastic return on that from the point of view of loyalty, respect, and trust. And I think that that's something that practice needs, loyalty, respect, and trust. Those things, if we can get those things in place, what sort of difference would that make to the vast majority of practices, do you think, Nicki?
Oh, absolutely massive. I really do. I think I want to go back to a few things that you said, Andy, about, you know, the trust, the respect, feeling appreciated. You know, I think every one of us is a human being. We're all flesh and blood. But what is the one thing that is common to us all? We all need to feel needed, wanted, and appreciated. If you can generate that in your business, that is the biggest pull. If everybody feels needed, they totally understand the job role and why it's important, how it helps to drive that vehicle forward, fantastic. You know, do they feel wanted? Yes, they do, because if you can actually tangibly show that you want the best out of them, you're going to support them, you're going to put an EPA in place, all those things, they're going to feel wanted and want to stay with you, and your staff retention will rocket. It will. And then the appreciation thing, the rewards, and it might just be that simple pat on the back. Thank you so much. I noticed that you'd really gone, you know, the nth mile today, and I just want to say how much I appreciate it. You know, it means the world to me. That sometimes can just leave an employee leaving your business that evening, you know, with their head held high and, you know, with their chest puffed out. It might be more than that. You might have some kind of incentive scheme and reward scheme in the practice, whatever it might be. I think the biggest thing is to feel needed and wanted, and the appreciation part comes later. But that all starts to build the trust. But the other thing that Andy picked up on was, why is trust so important? Because if your team start to trust you, you can have those open, honest conversations. I go into practices day in, day out, and you can cut the atmosphere with a knife, because that trusting culture does not exist. They're still being managed by bosses who use the push rather than the pull. So, you know, it's generating that, and there's lots of skills and techniques that Andy and I teach that actually help you generate that pull. And it is important, because we need to build that trust to be able to have those open and honest conversations, to have that open door policy where people feel that they can trust you to come knocking on the door and actually speak their minds. You know, and CQC is giving us a voice now. So team members should feel relaxed and confident enough to come and knock on your door and actually have those open and honest conversations. If you do, and you can do that, what starts to build is that loyalty, that commitment. Absolutely, people start to become committed to the purpose and to the business, and are far less likely to look for work anywhere else. Once you've got commitment in your team, you can then start holding people to account for things and answerable for what they're doing. Have that open conversation if somebody's not doing something as well as they've been trained to do it, or, you know, that they're letting standards slip. They're not going to feel personally criticised. You are literally just performance managing them, as they're expecting you to do, because you've been open and honest about your expectations, as have they with you. What then starts to happen is that you get to the top of the pyramid, where you start getting that fine level of detail within your business to drive it to success, but also to achieve that fine level of detail that CQC are now looking for. And I tell you what they are. I sit in a lot of CQC inspections, and one of the things that CQC is now doing on a very regular basis is pulling out your policies and procedures. So, you know, let's say your infection prevention policies and procedures, they will pull them out, take a nurse into decon, and ask the nurse to go through a cycle. What do they do in a cycle? What they do should be absolutely mirrored in that document, and vice versa. That is the fine level of detail that we're talking about. So your staff members need to be highly tuned, well-oiled to deliver. And if you work from the bottom up, building the trust, you know, so there isn't that fear of conflict, to build the commitment, the accountability, you're going to get that fine level of detail, and you're going to drive that vehicle forwards so much faster than you would otherwise. Do you agree with that, Andy?
I do. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. I think the thing with this phrase pull, okay, and sometimes when I start one of our sessions, I sometimes throw a disclaimer in. And the disclaimer, the verbal disclaimer that I sometimes throw in, is to say, I want you to unlearn everything that you've learned previously, so that today you can kind of look at things with a fresh sheet of paper. Because there's a danger that when we have a belief system inside us with regards to the way that something should work and something should run, it then limits us to maybe look at it in a different perspective. So I'll give you an example. If somebody has managed a business for 20 years in a specific way, and it's always been, okay, yeah, it's done all right, you know, we kind of tick along and everything's okay, there's a danger that people don't want to step outside of that little comfort zone necessarily. So I very often say to people, just reframe in your own mind that today, and I'm going to say the same to you as delegates today. Okay, I know you can't necessarily go out to the pub or go to the beach. Okay, we're all at home. But in order for you to really benefit from today's session, what you're going to need to be able to do is actually just write down a couple of things that you think that maybe you could think about putting in place inside your practice. And if you can maybe just come out with 2 things, it'd be great if you could come out with 4 or 5, but if you just come out with 2 things that maybe you did your own research on, and you get your head straight around how can I implement this inside our practice? How can I make a change inside the practice? Because once you start that process and you look to create pull and you move away from push, now you're really starting to empower the business. Because there's nothing that Nicki and I talk about that's just flowery. It's all got a commercial edge to it. Let me just read out something which may make you smile. And I'm going to tell you just very briefly about my own experience of walking into my own dentist, which is really interesting. I hope my dentist's not watching, by the way. Irrelevant. This is the fact of the matter. This is from The Guardian in August 2011. Now, this is somebody writing into The Guardian with a question to the financial pages, okay, around whether something is trustworthy or not. That's really interesting, this. So I've abbreviated it, and it was quite a lengthy letter, but the crux of it was this. My dentist is a good dentist, and I really trust him, but he seems very keen to book me in with a hygienist, and that's £45 a pop. Surely, won't it just be good enough for me to buy myself an excellent electric toothbrush? Question mark. The next question down is still linked to the same letter. Also, this is their words, not mine. Also, he tries flogging me insurance. Is this going to be a rip-off? Now, I look at that and I think, well, no, the dentists are doing exactly what they need to do. But what's going on there is a trust thing, and also what's going on there is a push thing, okay? So i.e. there's no trust, there's zero understanding of what the benefits are to the client, and actually it's being pushed on them. So then my head then goes, well, hang on a second, how are we creating a bigger story here? That now goes all the way back to the start of this conversation where we talk about purpose, and how do we communicate what our purpose is socially to the people that are around us, and obviously to our clients and our patients, and how we actually educating them. That might mean through social media or through other forms of storytelling. And the problem that dentistry has got is none of that goes on. Because, and I'm talking about as an external looking inward, there are a few maybe that generally that storytelling doesn't go on. Because of course, if we are able to educate people and we create pull, because that's the name of this session, if we're creating pull, you'll actually get your clients, your patients will be walking up to your desk saying to you, oh, I've been watching your social media channel recently, and I really need to take that insurance. That's what I really need to do. Oh, and also, can I make an appointment to see your hygienist as well? And you say, no problem, that's £60 an hour. Is that? And yeah, it's all right, it's fine. Because now we're in this zone where we actually understand the benefit to it. And of course, we're creating the pull scenario going on. That scenario that I'm talking about there is something that actually happened to me. And I wasn't critical about it, but I observed it from the point of view of a coach and trainer. And I thought to myself, how could that experience be different for me? How, if I were running my own dental practice, would I be able to influence people's decision around having better, healthier teeth? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? They need to see the hygienist. They need to probably have an insurance plan. They need to visit you guys more often. Actually, some of the associated services that you sell, we need to understand how do we create more of a pull around those associated services so that we don't have to sell them. It just means that people say, can I have that thing that you've got? Because it's brilliant. And that is really what I see as an external person looking in. The reason, Nicki, that I've just hooked onto that is because I was reading today's agenda, and of course, you're going to have a little bit of an insight. You're going to have a little bit of an insight into how to bring more clients in. So I wanted to create that pull scenario from a patient's perspective?
Absolutely. I think we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the patients, Andy. We absolutely do. What are they wanting? And I think very much the public persona of dentistry is still very negative. You know, whatever is in the media, it's all negativity. You know, if you stop somebody in the street and discussed dentists, they would still class them as money-making machines and people who drive around in fancy cars. We are not about that. There are some people that are about that, but I would say the majority of our community are well-meaning people who really want to give a service to the community, and that is genuinely who they are. So it's all about how do we demonstrate that purpose? How do we create that pull so the people who want integritous dentistry come to us, and they're magnetized to us. So what I was thinking about today, how can I summarize that, generating the pull rather than the push? And I did a bit of research today, and I came up across Disney's, something on the Disney website, and I thought this was brilliant because they are a pull society, and they broke it down into a mission-driven business and a purpose-driven business. So the mission-driven business is your push, your purpose is the pull. So this is what they're saying the difference is. So with a mission-driven business, they talk about what they do. With a purpose-driven business that are creating pull, they're telling people why they're doing it, the purpose behind it, the benefits, the value that it's going to give the patients. Going back to mission, it's about operating a business. It's just about, you know, the cogs whirring. But with a purpose-driven business, it's about sharing the dream. It's about sharing the dream and the vision, what you want to achieve and why you want to achieve it. So looking ahead to the future. Mission's all about strategy, about targets. It's very much the sort of NHS model that we're given. Purpose is about the culture, like Andy was saying, about building that trust between your patient base and your team. So your patients then become committed to you as well. And, you know, your patient retention is fantastic because they are loyal to you, because you're demonstrating your purpose and you're living and breathing it every day. You are delivering what you say on the tin. So missions, okay, it can be motivational when you've got targets to meet, but when you're looking at the purpose side of it, it's aspirational. People want to be part of it because it inspires them. It gives them aspirations, and it's helping them to be bigger and better and to develop as well. So for me, when we had our practice, it was about developing our greatest asset, and that was our team. I always was of the belief, if my team are the best that they can possibly be because they're fine-oiled, they're well-trained to deliver their place on the pitch, on the football pitch, so they can play their best game alongside their colleagues, you will achieve what you want to achieve in a lot shorter time than you ever imagined. Mission's about getting your patient and staff buy-in, but purpose is about ownership, feeling proud of your brand, about feeling proud to say, I work in that practice, you don't, and I'm really proud that I was given a place in that practice, and I'm going to stay there because I love what I do and I love the whole purpose of what I'm doing day to day. Mission's about focus, but the purpose is about passion, about feeling passionate about what you do every day and wanting to be part of a passionate organisation. Patients feel that, it's tangible. I was in a practice actually in Manchester not so long ago, and I have, their compliance and things weren't the best, but oh my word, the pull was amazing because they knew every single patient that came through that door by name. They asked them a personal question about whether being on holiday, how the dog was, were the children better. They had that absolute human connection that everybody needs to generate that pull. A mission, again, is about building a company, but purpose is about building a community. And that's absolutely what Rachel is doing in her practice with all the CSR stuff. And then, when patients see that Leeds United players are wanting to go there. It's all a bit about, it's the Me Too effect, isn't it? So, you know, if it's good enough for Leeds United players, gosh, I want a bit of that too. It's the Me Too effect, and it draws patients to you. You don't have to do any advertising. They will do it for you. And also people then start to spread the word. So one thing I would highly recommend, if patients do recommend a friend or, you know, family member to you, trace those referrals. Where's it come from? And thank that individual for the referral. They are building your business for you, and it's costing you nothing. And one thing that we used to do in our business was send a letter out to that patient thanking them for that referral. And the letter was a voucher to go to the local deli stroke wine shop, where there was an array of goods, and none of those gifts were over the value of £10, but they were all beautifully gift wrapped. And we had one lady, she made 16 referrals to us in a year, and it cost us £160. She was in and out of that shop like a yo-yo. She loved it, we loved it, and she brought in thousands of pounds worth of revenue for us, and it cost us £160. So that's the pull. It's making people feel appreciated. It's not blackmail, it's a genuine display of appreciation. As a human being, that goes an awful long way. So, you know, it's not just about laying bricks and mortar, it's about building cathedrals. It's about building something that people will talk about. So, you know, they will want to come and see you. You do not have to market. They will want to come and see you because they will know how amazing you are, and people will talk about you in that way within the community. So, you know, at the end of the day, it is about the pull. It's about building those human connections for me. What do you think, Andy?
So, Nicki, you've come out with a few crackers there, as you always do, and I think a message that I'd like to give the community is just that. It's the word community. There's two communities that you're all managing and dealing with. It's your staff community and also the external community that is actually around your practice. And at the moment, we're going through this really strange metamorphosis of actually probably of society. How many of you have sat at home for the last 3 weeks and have felt actually the most important things probably are the fact that I've got fresh water, I've got food, I've got shelter. We're going through a Midas change around what's important to us. And I think a lot of people are going to become less generically, less materialistic and more built around the need in community and to support and help people. So there's two things that you can get quick wins out of. I've already mentioned to you the EAP, that was the first one. But from the point of view of creating staff, trust, and that little bit of pull, and you have to be subtle with this, because if you've never done it before, it can look a little bit phony and a bit cheap. So just be careful with how you manage this. But actually just send everybody a message, maybe from the point of view of staff, you know, ask them how maybe can we support you? Is there a specific thing that we can offer? And then locally, maybe just send a message out on your Facebook page that we're thinking of you. You know, your local practice is thinking of you, and actually if there is something that you could provide free of charge, whether you've got some sort of a downloadable top tips for generic health, teeth health, whatever it might be, and give people the opportunity to contact you and to take that off you. And then the last one, I said 2, didn't I? But I'm going to give you 3. Then the last one, look to change your language around staff and around how you actually look to attain staff. And something again which I run in my seminars is I often say to people, it's an open question. We can't ask you because it's not a two-way dialogue. But I always say, is it easy? I want you to shout at your monitor now or your camera when I ask you this question. Is it easy for you to get great staff? Oh, I've just heard the masters of no's, right? Okay, so no, it's not easy. Is it easy to keep great staff? No, it's not. So what we need to do is we need to maybe just shift that culture, create that pull. And when we're recruiting somebody, that's an interesting time. Because, of course, you will have probably found yourself in that position where, you know, when you're interviewing somebody and in your head you think, oh, she'd be great in this practice. I think she'd be a brilliant receptionist or nurse or whatever. And what happens is there's almost a shift of you then start selling to that individual sometimes, okay? I'd like you to think about what I'm about to say to you. If you can repackage that up in your own mind, and when somebody says to you, Jane, why should I join your practice compared to maybe the other one that I'm going to go for an interview at, on Tuesday afternoon? What's the big difference between the two of you? You start using different words like, well, the thing is, Jane, we're a bit of a family unit, really. And actually, if you're lucky enough to join our family unit, there's fantastic recognition in there for you as an individual. And we consider your family unit as being part of the entity that joins us as well. And I'll give you an example around that. One of the ways that we look after our staff is because we think so much of them. If you're lucky enough to join us, you benefit from what I'm about to say to you. We actually have what's called an EAP, an Employee Assistance Program, in place. That means that you, your family members, get loads of support if there's anything that comes out and sort of blindsides you on a Tuesday with regard to problem with the family health or debt or whatever it might be. You need some legal help. So we do stuff like that. And then the other thing that we do is we have what we call Flyer Friday, so that on a Friday, if we're not busy, Employee of the Month gets to go home early, and it's just a quick flyer. So we do stuff like that if you're fortunate enough to join us, Jane. And it's about repackaging that and changing it around. Because recruitment, Nicki, like in business per se, in general, is difficult. But I think it's probably tougher for you guys in practice.
It is, and I know, we're very, very, very short of dental staff. But again, if you generate that pull, you will draw the right people to you. But also, I want to go back to that whole recruitment process and just ask you to analyse how you recruit right now. I think historically, and looking at most of the practice that I go into, people look at CVs, application forms, and again, it's all based on knowledge and skill set. How do you assess somebody's attitude and whether they're going to fit into your culture characteristically? Now, one thing I always advocate is using a personal specification where you're not just matching skills and knowledge to the role, but also the attitudes and behaviours. Now, how do you do that? Well, you can actually legitimately make a list of all the characteristics, all the attributes that you're looking for in somebody, and providing you're scoring it as you would with a normal score sheet for knowledge and skills, and you're doing that in a systematic way for every single person you're interviewing, and you are scoring it systematically, you are not being discriminatory. In actual fact, you are demonstrating that you're being well led. If we go back to the Francis report, which is really where the new CQC regime came from, when Robert Francis was sent into the Mid-Staffordshire NHS Foundation Trust, one of his main findings was there was no culture. It really was, it was bosses in place wielding a big stick. There was no communication. There was failings all over the place. There was no underperformance management. His findings actually formulated and catalysed the regime that we're working under at the moment. So within well-led key line of inquiry, it is about, one of the things that he wants us to do is to build a strong culture. That's part of the framework. So actually by implementing those things, scoring them appropriately so you're not discriminating, you will then start to handpick the right people into your organisation in the first instance. If you get the wrong person, oh my goodness, it's like throwing a grenade into the mix, and then managing them out of the business at a later date is the hardest thing in the world. So, how can you do that? In an interview situation, what I always advise people to do is actually give your written purpose for your business to that interviewee. Ask them to read it and say, how are you going to fit into that? Those people who are like-minded will absolutely twig and have an answer for you straight away. Those people that don't may sit and ponder for quite a while, or even ask you to go back to that question at the end. So it really helps and picks the men from the boys, to be fair. There's various techniques that you can use to then start handpicking the right people into your organisation. Now, people can be on their best behaviour and they can wing it in an interview if they're those kind of people. So I would always recommend if you are in that advantageous position where you have a few delegates and you're trying to choose which one, interviewees, and which one to take on board, always get somebody to come and work in your practice for the day. You might have to, pay them because they're taking holiday from their other practice, but actually see them in the workplace, see how they fit with other team members, see how they behave, look at their attitude, watch their behaviors. Are they going to be the right person to fit with your culture? Actually put a little bit of pressure on them on that day and see how they behave. And the real characteristics and the real traits will then start to float to the surface. And you will then hopefully be able to handpick the right person for your culture. What about you, Andy? Is there anything else that you would recommend during an interview process?
Well, what's really interesting is what you just talked about there, Nicki, was so again, if we flick right the way back when I was talking about the wants of employees, I talked about the fact that individuals' cultures need to be aligned with the organisational values. That's what the employee
absolutely, yes.
What you came up with there was absolutely perfect, because here's the thing. How often does business, now I'm not just talking about dentist practices, because one thing you've got to remember is, yes, you are all dental practices, I get that, but the common thread is that everybody that you employ are human beings, and all human beings have got the same idiosyncrasies, whether they're working in a paint factory or whether they're working in a dental practice. So here's the thing. If we're able to make sure that we're not forcing a square peg into a round hole, which I will be honest with you, I used to have a business with people in it, and I will be totally honest with you, I was that man. I used to go, oh yeah, she'll be great. And really, in the back of my head, I knew that wasn't a fit. But what I wanted was, I wanted a quick answer to a problem that I'd got. And so if I was really honest, and I am honest when I teach delegates as well, when I had staff inside the business, our culture wasn't where it needed to be. That's the honest truth. So when I train and develop with Nicki, yeah, we both Nicki and I both use real life examples of some of the mistakes that we've individually made.
And Andy, I'm with you on that. I had a team member in my practice who was that square peg that I was trying to fit into that round hole, and she set the tone for the day. Some days, she'd be coming in with that lemon drizzle cake and, top of the world. The next day, she wouldn't even give you eye contact or speak to you. And actually managing that team member, oh my word, it was the hardest thing in the world. And, actually managing somebody like that out of your business is almost an impossible task, because they flip from positivity to negativity. So on the day that you want to pick them up on their negativity, they're in a positive frame of mind and doing all the right things. So very, very difficult then to dive in and call them into your office when they're doing the right stuff on that particular day. So yes, getting the right people in the workplace right from the off is absolutely pivotal.
So I'm just mindful, Nicki, that we're in the last couple of minutes.
We are, yes. Yep.
I'm just going to give sort of my roundup, and then if you want to give your roundup, that's
sure.
Great. So for me, what I'm looking to be known in business for really is to engaging staff with business and changing culture between those two relationships for explosive growth. That's what I want to be known for ultimately on my quest of training businesses, managers. So I'd say to you, look, we've talked about a lot today, and all we've done really is just scratch the surface. That's kind of all we've done. And so if you want to contact Nicki for more information, then that's great, or myself, whatever you want to do. Nicki really is your point of contact. But what I'd like you to do is this. I've noticed that the people that have been watching us, we've not got vast amounts of people, but with the people that we've got have been watching us, so thank you for that. Yes. This is new stuff. This is new, right? This is a new way of looking at business. This is a new way of you looking at your practice and engaging your staff. And it's time now for change. It's time for all businesses, but particularly for medical services, doctors, surgeries, dental practices, care homes, in the way that we manage, and we need to create pull now more than ever.
Absolutely.
Life is so hard when we just push all the time. Let's become like the Pied Piper, create that positive whirlwind. So wherever we walk, staff just go, this is great. What can I do better, Jane? What can I do? How can I support the quest of the practice better? I feel like I belong. I feel like I'm part of the family. And once you've got that going, my goodness me, watch your business go wallop like that.
Oh, Andy, I agree. I totally agree. The practices that I go into that are thriving are the practices that generate the pull. They do all the right things. And actually, there's a very simple formula for that. There's key things that you can do in your business, whether you feel your culture's right today or not. If it's great and you want to sustain that moving forwards, that little formula works just as well as if your culture's not where it wants to be. You need to build it from the bottom upwards. There are key things that you can do in your business to actually get to where you want to be. So if you are one of those people thinking, actually, oh, so much I want to do in my business, there's so much more we can help you with. So yeah, we've run out of time. It was an hour. So yes, hopefully Rob might invite us back to do more. If not, in the meantime, Andy and I are going to be putting more things out there on leadership in dentistry on Facebook. Yeah, we're contactable at any point anyway.
Hi.
Thank you very much.
I'm still here.
Hi, Rob.
Thank you, Nicki. Thank you, Andy. So good. I really enjoyed that. And everybody stayed engaged all the way through. I've just got one quick question here.
I'm not seeing the questions actually.
Yeah, so one here from Jane. Thank you, you've been excellent, which I agree with. It's been a fantastic presentation. Been trying to do this, don't know if it was called pull, but I'm excited to drive my business and dream forward. That's great. Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Great.
Is there any questions, Rob, that anybody wants to ask us while we're here?
Let's have a look. No, I haven't seen any others that come forward. If anybody wants to ask now, but I'm more than happy to invite you both back. I think it's been fantastic.
Thank you.
We're going to run these series of webinars throughout the next few weeks and months because I think we're all, as dental professionals, going to be in this boat for quite some time. We're going to do everything we can to support our colleagues. The link for the CPD, should you need it, I'm sure we're all CPD'd out at the moment, but should you need it, will be available the next day or so. You'll get an email through automatically for that. There is no cost for anything whatsoever. We're not charging anybody for this. Also, one quick question here.
Hina's asking a question.
Go for it, Nicki.
Okay, what are your favourite questions to ask an interview to get a feel for the right candidate? Hina, there's a lot actually. Obviously, you're going to get your common garden questions, but I will always give them a scenario and say, actually, in this scenario, what would you do? Because I know how I would want it managed and I know what I would do myself. So if you're looking for somebody who's like-minded, you're looking for somebody who would deal with it in a similar fashion with similar behaviours. So give them a scenario, find out how they behave. The other thing is, give them, if they're like-minded, and I'm always reading, I'm always trying to keep up to date with what's going on out there in the bigger, wider world of compliance and legislation and leadership and everything, give them a snippet from current affairs, something from a dental magazine, give them a little snippet to read and ask them for their opinion on it. Again, is their opinion similar to yours? There's so many things that you can do. If you are going to get them into practice for the day, what you can actually do is to set them a task and observe from a distance to see how they actually deal with it. Lots and lots and lots of things. And, Hina, if you do want to speak to me afterwards, I'm very, very happy for Rob to hand over mine and Andy's contact details if you want to, keep the communication going, after today.
Yeah, that might be, I'm more than happy to do that. And of course we will. It might be interesting actually to have a sort of future presentation on interview techniques.
Absolutely.
Challenging thing, getting the right staff, we have our own practice.
Absolutely. I mean, I've actually got a presentation already, Rob, about how to apply for your dream job.
Perfect. How did I know that? You are so organised. This is you put me to shame. Okay, thanks, Tina. I'm glad you liked that. Okay, I'm going to call this to an end. Really, it's been fantastic. Again, thank you so much for giving up your time. Nobody's.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you for inviting us.
Everybody's just doing it because they're trying to help each other.
It was a pleasure.
So, yeah, thanks, Andy. And from Grimsby, you've got to be the right lad. Okay. As I say, we have recorded this as well, so we will edit it down and then we'll share it with Nicki and Andy so they can put it on the Facebook groups or whatever they want to do with it. But yeah, once again, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all for staying with us, which you all did as well. And hopefully we'll see you again very soon. Okay, take care. Bye bye now.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Thanks all. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.